He's like, okay, so what I do is I find a city and I find the main street and I go out 30 miles. I buy all that land and then I wait 20 years. I'm gonna pivot a little bit on the investing side because I wanted to give you something that you might not know. But you did a podcast with Graham Stephan, and
that was fun. He's a great guy.
Yeah, Graham's a nice guy.
He's done a great job too on his stuff, man.
He's followed in your footsteps in a lot of ways.
Well, he's different, but I mean he's good. We like him.
Yeah, Graham's a good dude, and he showed you his investment portfolio.
Oh yeah, that's like a thing he does when he has people on. I'm like, I don't know, Graham. I don't know if I'm qualified to help you with that. But yeah.
You said something to him that massively changed the direction of how we invested. Just
Whoa.
So you know. Yeah.
Whoa.
So I just wanted to share that with you. So I think you had said loosely, well, before I look at this, if this were your brain or your knowledge or your experiences, what percentage of this pie would you say is real estate versus stocks versus anything else? And he said, well, because he had asked you, do you think I'm over-indexed on real estate? But when you asked him the question, he said, well, I mean, I guess probably 85% of my knowledge is around real estate. And I think his portfolio kind of reflected that. You were like, well, then that's a perfect mix for you. And for me, as we were coming out of our liquidity event, we'd probably taken about 40 million home before that.
Wow, good for you. That's awesome.
It's not 300.
It was 300's gross, dude.
I know.
You know the difference in gross and net.
But anyways, and so I had while I was growing the business, I basically just didn't really invest at all. I mean, I just put it in indexes and was like, I'll deal with it later. And then we had the liquidity event, and I talked to probably every guy that I know who was richer than me and was like, what should I do with all this? And the answers that I got were as different as there are people under the sun.
Yep.
Which left me more confused than anything. And so the reason that little piece of advice that you gave to Graham was so meaningful for me was that it was personalized because everybody told me what they did and what had worked for them. But, one of the guys I asked was like, oh, take all that and buy one huge building. And I was like, I don't know anything about, I was like, I don't want to risk everything on one building. He's like, well, I've been doing this 30 years. Like, that's what you should do. It's like, but I'm going to mess this up.
That scares the crap out of me.
Yeah. So, I have no idea. Tenants and termites and toilets and all that stuff. I have no idea how any of that stuff works. Right. And so when I thought back when I looked at that pie and thought, okay, well, what's my knowledge base? It was like, it's all business. Everything I've done has been business, and all the money I've made has been business. And so I showed that clip to Layla, my wife, and I was like, I think this is what we should do. I think we should just stick to business and just buy businesses and grow them.
Ooh,
and
I love it.
That's what we did with acquisition.com.
Good for you. That's a great, wow.
But that little piece of advice changed the direction of how we allocate all of our assets and what we do, because it's funny because if I was going to write a $5 million check into a building, I got 3 or 4 deals that were around that size in terms of check size. And I'd get all the way to the end, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. And I'm just trusting that this is a good deal.
Yeah,
like I had the Excel sheet and the projector returns and all this stuff, and I was like, I don't feel good about this because I don't know. When on the flip side, if I'm going to write a $5 million check into a business, I feel fine about it because I'm like, oh, I know how. Like I don't know everything, obviously.
No,
there's a
but
million things you could go wrong.
it's your sandbox,
right?
Yeah.
And so, anyways,
that's beautiful. I love that. That's what happened was we had a product that we called Wealth Coach for a little while, and we ended up doing these very small, but I don't know, we charged more than we ever charged, like $1,000 or something. We always charged $20 so to come to this little seminars, and we would end up talking to these people that were millionaires or 5 million and 10 million, and I kept asking them, okay, what do you put money into? Because they've actually done it. They had money. Like you've actually done it. You have money. And so it's not someone with a theory on TikTok, And so what I kept hearing from them was this array of all kinds of different things. So the answer to the question wasn't a certain investment made them rich. What it was they put money in stuff they knew.
Yeah.
And I mean, one guy was a car dealer, and he had a massive classic car collection, which for an ego-driven person is a horrible idea,
right?
But because you can lose your butt in any kind of collectible.
Yeah.
But for somebody that is in the car business, and his grandfather had a dealership, and his father had a dealership, and he he knows that, loves it.
Yeah.
He goes out in the garage and pets the cars. I mean, say, guess what? He's making that portfolio seriously gave him a great return. Now, do I recommend to the general public, go get a car? No. No, put money in stuff you understand and you love, and don't put money in stuff because it sounds fancy or somebody, it sounds sophisticated. Because there's something that happens when you get money. You think that everybody that has money is sophisticated about their investing. And what I figured out was almost no one is.
Yeah.
They're very primitive. I mean, a lot of people I talked to were farmers, and you know what they got? Lots of land. They got dirt, man. Yeah. That's it. Just dirt. And it doesn't even, they don't even necessarily plant it, but they just buy dirt. And one guy had 8,000 acres of dirt, and I'm like, God, in Kansas, I'm like, golly, I wouldn't even more, because I don't know anything about that kind of dirt. I like real estate, but that would scare me to death.
Yeah.
But for him, it was the most comfortable, natural thing in the world, to your point. And so I just learned that put money in stuff you love and you understand. Don't put money in stuff because it sounds sophisticated, because you're getting ready to lose your butt, because you're trusting some guy who doesn't have any money, who's trying to sell you something, and driving a bad car. And we won't name the bad car, but anyway, that's where that came from. It was just anecdotally hanging out with those folks and researching it, and it gave me peace because I was starting to make bank for the first time, and I'm like, I need to be like doing double backflip limited family partnerships or some kind of crap. Yeah. I don't even know what they are, but I probably ought to be doing one if I'm making this kind of money. And then you talk to a guy and he's like, yeah, you ought to do a double backflip with a twist. And I'm like, yeah, but get right up to it. And I'm going, I don't half understand. No, I think I'd rather just bury it in the backyard than that, because at least I know where it is,
It's funny, though, because even with the dirt example, there was a guy who his entire investment strategy explained in an interview. He was like, you guys are going to be bored about what we're going to do for the next 55 minutes because I can explain it in 5. And we're like, and I'm listening. I'm like, okay, here's it. He's like, okay. So what I do is I find a city and I find the main street, because usually there's a main street that goes through the middle of the city. It's the oldest street, whatever. He's like, and then I take a ruler and I go out 30 miles. He's like, and then I buy all that land. He's like, and then I wait 20 years.
I love this guy.
Yeah. And what are the big...
Any questions?
Yeah. He's like, so what do you want to do with the rest of our time together? They're like, so how do you hedge? He's like, oh, buy it in cash, because you can't take loans on land, and that's what I do, and we've been doing that for many, 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 many years.
I had dinner with a guy the other night that had $2 billion net worth, and he's second gen, but his dad was doing dirt, not unlike what your friend was doing, and then he couldn't get the bank to do the deal. He was borrowing money to do the dirt, and so he bought the bank. It was a little hometown bank, and they screwed with him, and so he bought it. And he's like, okay, now they'll behave. And then he started making money on the bank and got in and got to figure out how banking. And now they own like 15 or 20,000 acres, 3 wineries around the world, and a whole bunch of banks, bunch of community banks. And they're multi-billionaires. And so, but it started from that. And they don't really do anything else. The wineries are more of a fun project. I think they know what they're doing with those, probably, the way he was talking. He knew wine. And but he knows banks and he knows dirt. And that's where all their money is. Yeah. And they're not diversified for having as much billions with an S, it's interesting. Those kinds of people are enthralling to me.
And it's interesting because most of the billionaires that I have looked at, they usually make their money in 1 or 2 vehicles that they know exceedingly well, where they feel like they have an unfair advantage. And like they get there not because there's a marketplace advantage, but because they have an information advantage. They know it better.
Exactly. And if you go through the Forbes 400, I think it's 67% last time I looked are first gen. They're all billionaires now. You don't qualify if you don't have a B. And they're first gen, and I think I looked at them. Of the first gens, it was 90-something% were business driven. So it was Michael Dell, Bill Gates, Hobby Lobby, David Green, Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy, and so they started a business, and it led to either they took it public or they just monetized the crud out of it, and it just has a marketplace valuation. Oprah, but the secret of Oprah's wealth is not her celebrity status; it's the empire she built under the celebrity status. And so, you go down those things like that, and you go, okay, you can get to $1 to $5 million net worth with your 401k and your paid-off home.
Yeah.
But mathematically impossible to get to $1 billion in your 401k. It's not possible to do it.
Yeah.
So you got to there's other strategies to be involved if you're going to do that.